Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please leave a rate and review. Today, we'll be heading over to the Mid-American Conference for some MACtion and taking a look at the RedHawks of Miami, who finished 9-5 in 2024 and capped off their season with a win in the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with their spring showcase on April 26th. We have a special guest joining us today. 3, 2, 1. He is a student at Miami University. He is majoring in finance and journalism. He is the sports editor for the Miami Student. He is Kethan Babu. Kethan can be found at Kethan Babu _04 on X. Welcome to the show, Kethan.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Great. Thank you for asking. We're happy to have you here, and we're happy to talk some MACtion. You know, what's better than MACtion midweek? Nothing. That's the answer.
Absolutely nothing, man. Those Tuesday night and Wednesday night games going on the road to Ball State University. I love it. Love it.
Well, for those who are just turning into the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in sports journalism and how long you've been covering the football team?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, but I actually grew up a Packers fan. My dad was born and raised in Green Bay. So I was pretty lucky watching the NFL growing up because I really started getting in when Aaron Rodgers was there. Watched that Super Bowl in 2010 and then just watched him MVP after MVP. So I had a good experience watching NFL, and I really got into writing during high school. So my senior year, I started writing for the newspaper. I chose Miami almost on a whim. I was going to go to Michigan State, but decided to study there, chose finance, but I added journalism later, started writing for the newspaper, and kind of just went from there. Just started picking up more and more stories. Got to go to some pretty cool places. Got to go to Ford Field in 2023, go to Orlando for that bowl game. And then once I moved up to sports editor, I just really took over covering football and basketball, and here I am now.
Well, talking about some RedHawks football, change and new faces seems to kind of be the words that we will hear a lot today for the RedHawks roster in 2025, but there is no change to those in charge in terms of the actual coaching staff. For those not familiar with the RedHawks offensive style, how would you describe it?
Yeah, like you said, we got the same names. Obviously, some of them are moving around. The big thing that we're going to be missing, our special teams coordinator, Kyle Blocker, he's left, and he's replaced by Johnny Aylward. I think if I had to think of one word to describe our coaching style, it's consistent. I don't think we're a team that's going to be super flashy, super in your face about anything, but we are consistent. And Chuck Martin, he does a great job of picking trustworthy guys. So a lot of the guys are Miami alum and guys that have played with them or just know about the MAC in general. So like you said, all the names that are staying there, they have bought into the program. They've been here for years, but they are going to stay consistent, in my opinion.
The offense, we'll get to the actual quarterback position in a minute, but do you see them kind of molding the offense around the personnel or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the offense I'll tell you the truth, at the start of the spring practice, it could have looked better. There were some obviously new quarterback, new wide receivers, a lot of young players just in general. Offensive line was all over the place, but it took a little bit of time to get everyone adjusted, get everyone on the same timing. But I think now everyone's molded around the offensive style on the team, and we can talk a little more about that later. But definitely focus on the personnel. Miami's a team where obviously a player's going to do good and they might go to the transfer portal, but then the players that step up are going to be equally solid. So just molded around that, molded around our brand new quarterback, Daquan Finn. And again, we could talk about that later, but I'm excited to watch this team. I don't see us digressing heavily. Maybe during the first couple of games, it might be a little rough, but Chuck Martin, he knows how to take in new players, young players, and get them really to buy into being a RedHawk.
All right, Kethan. So you must have a thing for quarterbacks. If you're a Green Bay fan and you've had Aaron Rodgers and all the stability, and then Miami of Ohio, they've had a quarterback, Brett Gabbert, there for a while, but now it's time to move on. He's gone to graduation, and they bring in a 2023 All-MAC first-team quarterback, Daquan Finn, who was previously at Toledo, then last year was at Baylor, and then now on his way to Miami of Ohio. They also returned backup Henry Henson. How did this quarterback room look in the?
It looked absolutely different, in my opinion. So, like you said, we've had Brett Gabbert since 2019. This is the first year in 6 years that we're not going to have him in the quarterback room. Obviously, he's had injuries, so he's missed games. We've seen other players step up for him, but just the fact that he's not in the red and white is going to be weird already. But it is going to be fun to watch, especially Daquan Finn. He is a mobile quarterback, and we haven't really seen that. Brett Gabbert, especially after his injury in 2023, he was less likely to get out of the pocket and go for rushing yards. Daquan Finn, that's like his main attribute. It's what it seems like. I was looking at his stats at Toledo. He had almost 2,000 rushing yards, 25 rushing touchdowns at Toledo. Like you said, he was MAC Player of the Year 2023. He won the conference championship 2022. He's someone that he can make reads, so make no mistake about that. But he's very much like Lamar Jackson almost, where if he doesn't like what he sees, he's going to take off running. He'll get 5-10 yards. And that's going to be really impactful in this MAC, especially for a team like Ohio last year. They won the conference. Parker Navarro, I want to say, was 4th or 5th in the conference for rushing touchdowns. So having a quarterback that's going to be able to take off running when they can't find a wide receiver open is going to be incredible. Like you mentioned, having Henry Henson back, he's got experience. He threw a touchdown against Central Michigan when Gabbert was out in 2024. So not only having an experienced MAC quarterback in Daquan Finn, who is the first time at Miami, but he's had 5 years in the MAC, but having Henry Henson, who already knows Miami's play style, is going to be great to see. I don't know if they're going to split reps or how they're going to decide who the starter is, but I'm very confident in just the new quarterback room in general, having someone who honestly doesn't play a whole lot like Gabbert, who's going to be able to get out of the pocket like that, but still buy into Miami's play style.
Do you think Finn has what it takes to be first team all MAC QB in 2025 or even MAC Player of the Year?
Ooh, I don't know about that. I have confidence in him. And when I talked to Chuck Martin, this was at the start of April, so before the spring showcase, the number one thing that he said was that Finn is dedicated above all else. He says that he spends extra time in the weight room. He says he always talks with his wide receivers before and after practice. He's working really hard to get that timing in. So no matter what, he's going to put in the effort. He's going to put in the time to do the best he can. But just with the MAC, how it is set up, it is so competitive. It is so competitive. Each year there's a new team and a new player that comes up. You rarely see the same teams have similar success. Some teams do really great 2 or 3 years in a row and then digress completely. So next year we may see a completely different top 5 than what we did this past season. Just with the way the conference is set up, it may be a long shot for Finn to be MAC Player of the Year, but I believe that this Miami offense, they can shine still. I mean, they've been shining for 4 years now.
Well, moving on to the running game, the RedHawks lose leading rusher from a year ago, Keon Mosey, who graduated. They also lose Kevin Davis and Dylan Downing to graduation as well. That trio combined for 273 attempts, 1,592 rushing yards, and 9 touchdowns. This room is highlighted by the return of second leading rusher Jordan Brunson, who had almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2024, as well as veteran Kenny Tracy, who missed all of the 2024 season due to injury. How did the running backs look in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, a big problem with the running backs early on, I believe, is the offensive line and just getting guys to make spots open, but it's not a dig at the offensive line or the running backs. I think that, like you mentioned, Jordan Brunson, he's going to step up in a big time. So he was already impactful last season, but just when you have Keon Mosey there, it doesn't take a whole lot to have a big impact on the team. Jordan Brunson, he's going to step up. I believe he'll have a breakout year. He was used more as a end zone running back. So you saw that in the bowl game. He had a rushing touchdown from the 5 or the 4 yard line. But I see this year he and Kenny Tracy will most likely split reps, at least early on in the midfield. But like you mentioned, the skill is already there. Whether that split looks like mostly Brunson, mostly Tracy, or 50-50 is to be determined. But having Tracy back again is going to be huge for a team that is losing, I want to say, a third of its starters, maybe even more than that, just across the board. So having those players that know what Chuck Martin likes, know what Pat Welsh likes on offense is going to be huge. Having him come back after a year off, I assume he's hungry. He's willing to do what it takes to come back up after missing a year. And with Brunson again returning is going to be huge. But it's going to be interesting to see that Wisconsin game. I'm going to try to go to that as best as I can. It's on the road, but I am interested to see what their reps are going to look like.
With Kenny Tracy, did he look fully recovered from his injury in the spring?
I saw him practicing. I meant to ask, and I should have, but I didn't at the time. But he is practicing. He looks like he is going to be ready for August, is all I'm going to say on the matter.
If you had to guess today, who do you think gets that first carry against Wisconsin?
I'm going to go with Jordan Brunson just because I am curious if Pat Wells is going to say, hey, Kenny Tracy, you've missed a year, but you're taking the first rep. I imagine they'll go with Jordan Brunson, who is healthy and has been healthy and is going to play. I think that Jordan Brunson will take the first 2 or 3 reps even, and then Kenny Tracy will get it at some point, whether that's the second offensive drive. I believe he will get a rep in the first game, but I imagine they'll stick with Brunson.
It seemed like last year, Keon Mosey did a lot of work, but then like you mentioned, he would kind of get pulled at the goal line, right? And Brunson might get that goal line work. Do you I guess you think Brunson will get that goal line work again? And unlike Mosey, maybe he'll have the yards and touchdowns to go along with it.
Absolutely, Brunson is going to stay as a goal line guy. I need to look at what Kenny Tracy was doing 2 years ago. Maybe he'll be a goal line guy as well, but Brunson especially. I mean, you mentioned Keon Mosey, but Kevin Davis as well was super impactful at the run game last season. He's graduating as well. So missing those 2 players is going to, we'll just say it's going to suck because it is. But Jordan Brunson, 100%. If we're at the 5 and we need a running back to punch in, he's the guy.
Do you think, given Tracy's injury from last season, do you think maybe they try to ease him into things and maybe as the season goes along, he kind of gets more and more reps? Or
that's what I would do, yeah. Whether he gets a rep in Wisconsin just late in the game, or if they decide let's not give him a rep at all in Wisconsin, let's wait till Rutgers or I believe UNLV is right after that, is to be determined. I would be surprised if Chuck Martin is going to throw him out there in the first half of Wisconsin just to get him back out there. He hasn't played in 2 years at that point. That would be surprising, especially when Brunson is equally solid, in my opinion. But yeah, he'll ease into it. I don't think he'll stay on the bench. He'll get reps.
Let's turn our attention over to the wide receivers room. This room lost 4 guys who accounted for 260 targets, 2,385 yards receiving, and 19 touchdowns in 2024. The big losses are first-team All-MAC wide receiver Javon Tracy off to Minnesota. Second-team All-MAC wide receiver Reggie Virgil is off to Texas Tech, and Cade McDonald graduated. This room is highlighted by the return of Cam Perry and the 5 former P4 wide receivers that they bring in from the transfer portal, and Deion Colsey from Notre Dame, Cordell Russell from Colorado, Darian Williamson from Florida State, Keith Reynolds from Washington, and Brady Simmons from Indiana. How did this group look to you in the spring?
Yeah, they look great. I think the big thing to note with this is people transferring out to Power 4 programs. That's the reality of being a Group of 4 school, Group of 5 school, is you're going to have a breakout year. And then with the transfer portal, someone like you mentioned, Reggie Virgil or Javon Tracy, they're going to get calls from places from the SEC or Big 12 or Big 10, and they're going to go on. And much respect to those guys. You can't knock them for that. But at the same time, Miami's always been good about replacing those players. So we lost Gage Larvadan and Rashad Amos to Power 4 programs in 2023. And what do you know? Reggie Virgil and Javon Tracy and Kevin Davis, Keon Mosey, they're going to step up and replace those roles. And I see a very similar thing happening here, especially with the guys that we recruited in the transfer portal. Having those guys from Power 4 programs is going to be huge with their experience, especially the older players. There are some 5th and maybe 1 6th year, but at least a couple 5th years in there that have experience at a Power 4 program. The main thing early on that I noticed was the timing. They were just, some of them didn't know the route, or they were at the wrong spot in the wrong time. They got there a couple seconds late. Some of it's on the quarterback. Quarterback threw a little late, a little behind. That was early on. At the spring showcase, they looked great. They were making flashy plays, contrary to what I said earlier. But obviously it's not consistent. But Cole Weaver, he had an amazing catch over a defender in the end zone. Just relying on those returners, I'm going to keep up bringing Cole Weaver. I really do believe even as a sophomore, he'll be super impactful on this team. Having Cam Perry back is going to be huge as well. Someone who already knows Miami's offense. with the combination of Henry Hess and obviously knowing what the quarterback is going to look like at Miami is going to be huge. But as far as the transfers go, I like Deion Colzie and I like Cordell Williamson. I believe they'll have a large impact on this roster as well. All the older transfers, even if off the field, just in the locker room, telling players like, mental wise, here's what you got to do. Here's the route that you should have run. That's a big thing. Cole Weaver was telling me after the spring showcase, they'll do that all the time. After every practice, after every weight room, they'll say there and they'll almost critique each other, give each other their flowers, but just say, hey, next time, make sure try this move. So I am still confident in those guys.
I do have one question as our listeners. You mentioned Deion Colzie that that you really like, but then you said Cordell Williamson. So it's a combination of Cordell Russell and Darian Williamson. Is it both, or is it one more that's sticking out to you than the other?
It's both. I can't pick just one player off the top of my head that's really going to stand out. I believe just as a wide receiver room in general. Obviously, to be fair, it is still early in the spring. It's still early. There's still the whole summer to figure out what that's going to look like. But everyone looks equally solid. And again, that timing was a little sketchy early on, but at the spring showcase, which was a week ago, they look like they're getting it together. And Coach Martin still says that there's work to be done, clearly.
With that timing and connection with these wide receivers, by the time the spring showcase came around, you said it looked a little bit better. Was there anyone that really had a good connection that you saw Finn was targeting early and often?
Cole Weaver, not to be a broken record here, but he had one play. I hope someone recorded it and put it on Twitter. Maybe we could find it later. But he had an amazing catch at the back of the end zone on the right side over a defender. So perfect ball, perfect jump just to get it over the defender. That connection, I think, is going to be great just because he is a Red Hawk. He's been a Red Hawk for 2 years now. 1 year. This is his second year now. So that connection is going to be huge. And I want to say it was Hessen that threw it to him, but don't quote me on that. That might be wrong. So that Miami connection of, hey, we've been here before. We already know what it's like. The main thing is getting those guys that already know what it's like and telling all the transfers. Because when you're losing, like I said, a third of your starters, that's going to be huge in the next couple months to make sure every guy's real like, hey, this is what Miami football is like.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's 260 targets that are vacant from 2024. How do you see those targets getting divided up?
Even early on, I think that it's going to be pretty split even. I don't see one or two players getting a majority of the reps for the first couple games. And that was pretty similar to last season as well against Northwestern, our first game. There wasn't any one player that had a significant amount of reps or receptions compared to the rest. And that's just standard for us. We don't really know the number one wide receiver until game one. But once conference play starts, it'll shake up. And I imagine there will be 2 or 3 receivers similar to Reggie Virgil and Javon Tracy last season. We don't really throw to tight ends, so I can't imagine it'll change much this season as far as tight ends getting receptions. But I know running backs wise, they get a lot of receptions as well. Kevin Davis was 3rd or 4th on the team for receptions. So it'll be interesting to shake out. I wish I had a stronger answer than that, but going into week 1, I believe it'll be split pretty even amongst the 4 or 5 receivers they start. And then once conference play starts, it'll be clear who the top 2 or 3 guys are.
We're early on, just finished up the spring, but what's your best guess for that week 1 lineup that rolls out there from the wide receiver room?
I wrote it out, and I almost want to change it a little bit, but I'll tell you who I have right now. I got Cam Perry, I got Deion Colzie, I got Russell, and I got Cole Weaver as the 4 guys. And I could very easily be 0 for 4 on that. They could be completely different from what I expect going against Wisconsin, but I think all 4 of those guys have the strengths that Chuck Martin and Pat Walsh are going to be looking for, the strengths that Daquan Finn's going to be looking for down the field. I can see at least 1 or 2 returners going in, so Perry and or Weaver. I don't see it being completely just transfer guys or first-year players, but there's a reason we recruited those Power 4 players, so I see at least 2 of those guys making the lineup as well.
So you mentioned tight ends a little bit when we talk about the receivers, but If you were to describe how the tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone that's never caught a Miami game, how would you describe it?
They're mostly for blocking. Last season, we had a tight end. It was Jack Coldiron. He had a couple receptions, but not a lot. They're mostly used as just another force on the offensive line to get the running backs open, and that obviously worked as far as Kevin Davis and Keon Mosey goes. But they're going to be used for just opening gaps, protecting the quarterback. They may be used as an extra option in certain plays. I need to look at the new tight ends to see what do they do as far as getting receptions go in high school and at their previous programs. But losing Jack Coldiron as well is going to be slightly disappointing to just a graduation because he's been a great player for many years. Yeah. But we're bringing in Brody Cosin and Grant Leeper from the transfer portal, and they're both similar in size, similar in height to Jack Coldiron. I think 166, 165, or 6'4". So they'll be impactful for that. I would love to see our tight ends take more of a Travis Kelce type role where they're getting more receptions, more so used as a receiver. But in the past, we have used him more for blocking. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So,
well, the offensive line, like you talked about earlier, they lost 5 starters from 2024, and kind of the running backs were kind of looking for holes there during the spring. This room does return some key reserves from 2024 in Gregory Smith Jr. and Drew Terrell, as well as adding 3 transfers. How did that group look to progress throughout that spring?
Yeah, by the spring showcase, they looked really good at protecting the pocket. And I think that obviously is helped by someone like Daquan Finn, where even if a defensive lineman can get past the offensive line, he's going to take off anyway. So that's going to be huge. But they look great as far as protecting the quarterback. I didn't see Daquan Finn or Henry Heston getting absolutely swarmed by anyone at the showcase. And maybe the defenders were taking it easy. They don't want to break their new toy. But I imagine that the offensive line is going to be great for that. It takes a little bit of pressure off with the offensive line where Gabbert usually isn't going to take off running. If a defensive lineman comes through, he'll get out, but he'll get sacked a couple yards down the line. Whereas Finn is going to take off, he'll get 5, 6, maybe even more yards. Like I said, he's used as Lamar Jackson. It takes a little bit of the pressure off the offensive line where they're going to be blocking, but at the same time, they know Finn's going to be able to get out of there if they give him enough time. Now, as far as opening holes for a running back, it looks a little questionable right now. I didn't see a whole lot of running at the spring showcase. They had a couple plays. I'm trying to think who it was. They had a couple plays would stand out going for 10, 15, 20 yards. But in general, a lot of the focus at the spring showcase was on passing. And a big thing I know at the beginning of last season was our running game just wasn't where it needed to be at all. Through the first 3 games, we got outperformed in not only rushing yards, but defending the rush. So we would not be able to run against teams, and then we'd let teams run all over us for 3 games straight against Northwestern, UC, and Notre Dame. So that's probably going to be a big focus, is getting the offensive linemen on the same page and be like, hey, know your assignments, know where you need to be and when, and allow a running back to get on through.
Well, when you talk about working on those assignments and talking and gelling, was there a particular rotation that kept coming out with the first teams, or like how influx is that, or do you kind of have an idea of what your offensive line will look like week 1?
I don't have a strong idea, unfortunately, but whoever it is, I mean, our offensive line early on is just going to need to know that they need to improve. Early on, our offensive line usually has room for improvement. By the end of the season, I know you were 6th in the conference in rushing yards, so obviously they picked it up a notch, whether that's the running backs that took all the effort or the offensive line just learned how to get better with their blocking assignments. But as of right now, no, I don't have a current idea for a rotation.
All right, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
It's a toss-up between 2 guys I've talked about a lot, Daquan Finn and Cole Weaver. I believe Finn, as an experienced conference player, as someone who spent 5 years in Toledo, won MAC Player of the Year in 2022, made back-to-back conference championships. Obviously, we beat him 2023, so shout out us. But especially with how things went last season and how he has one more year of eligibility, I imagine he's got a little bit of determination, a little bit of hunger just to come back and send Miami back to the conference championship and not repeat what we did against Ohio, which is a little disappointing to hear. And like I've talked about before, having a quarterback similar to Lamar Jackson who's going to be running like that, we haven't seen that for at least the past 6 years. Avion Smith was good at running, but we only saw him sporadically. Brett Gyver he was an air guy, and more power to him. We needed him for that. But having someone to switch up what we expect from Miami is going to be really fun to see more than anything else. And then, like I said, Cole Weaver, yep.
It's like, well, you heard it here first. Lamar Jackson, DeQuan Finn, we can't tell the difference. DeQuan Finn to the moon. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And for those not familiar with the Miami defense, can you describe the style and scheme that Coach Breakin wants to run there?
Yeah, big emphasis is on the secondary. So our linebackers and our cornerbacks are dogs. They rock. And I know I'm a little biased because that's just my team right there. But they are great, and we are returning some strong players. We got Corbin Hondru, Adam Trick, and Silas Walters, all super impactful players throughout the whole season, and especially against at the Arizona Bowl in December. They're all coming back. The thing that with the defense is they struggle early on. Like I said before, they struggle early on with defending running backs. So through the first 3 games, I'm trying to remember the actual stats, but we would let teams go for hundreds of yards while our running backs only went for 60 or so. And not only that, but we'd let them go for 50 yards off one run. So we'd let them get big plays. That was a big problem against UC. We let their running back get 50 or 60 yards at the end of the fourth quarter, and that basically sealed the game. But by the end of the season, we were allowed the 4th lowest rushing yards. So it just takes some time to develop, and especially with basically an all-new defensive line, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But Bill Brick is an experienced guy. Chuck Martin, he knows what he's doing as far as assigning or bringing in players from the transfer portal and recruiting players. So while there may be some struggles early on against the run, I believe that our pass defense is going to be incredible. And I would argue they'd go toe-to-toe with some of the Power 4 teams that we're playing. I think that the last time we played Wisconsin, I believe we lost 58-0. So I believe we'll do better than that, at least. It's pretty hard to outdo that. But the pass defense, I think, will be strong early on, and it'll continue to be strong. The run defense might have some trouble early on just because of our new defensive line, but I believe that they'll buy in or they'll improve as the season goes on.
So for fans that are in like other conferences like CUSA or the Sun Belt who might be listening in, can you describe the scheme that they run there? Is it a 4-2-5? Is it a 3-4? Just so people who are not familiar with the RedHawks defense.
They're a 4-2-5. They use the linebackers mostly as cornerbacks, I would say. Every once in a while, you see a linebacker, especially a guy like Matt Salopek. He's gone now, but he'll get to the quarterback real quick. So they'll use him to rush the offensive line. But in general, they're more as a secondary. I know Silas Walters, Adam Trick, and Corbin Hunter, they all had 2 or 3 picks. I wrote the stats somewhere. I just can't see them right now. But, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. But
and Salopek started his career as a defensive back, right? And then got bigger and moved to, the full-time linebacker.
mm-hmm.
Let's dig into the position rooms that Coach Breakin will be coaching, and let's start with the guys up front along that defensive line. This group graduates all 4 starters up front, and first-team All-MAC edge Brian Ugu, second-team All-MAC edge Corey Suttle, as well as Savio Frazier and Kobe Hilton on the interior. They accounted for 115 pressures, 14 sacks, and 77 tackles. This room is highlighted by the return of Nasir Washington on the inside, and Adam Trick on the edge. How did the defensive line look in the spring?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Brian Ugu. It's going to be tough without him because he was such an impactful. I wrote a profile on him. He was a leader more than anything else. He was someone that's going to get in the locker room, get up on a bench and start talking to everyone. So having him missing is going to be tough. Like you mentioned, though, the returners that are coming, it's almost passing the torch from the players that are gone, Ugu and Savio. They're passing the torch to guys like Nazir Washington, who they spent plenty of time in the weight room or just rooming together. So they're gonna be able to step up, I believe, and replace the guys that are leaving. But just in general, having the all new defensive line, you could tell that they were still struggling even at the spring showcase just to kind of work together a little bit. And that's probably something that will get ironed out in the summer. But early on in the season, we need to defend the run, and we obviously don't do that early in the season. But that defensive line, I still have confidence in them. They just got a lot of work to do right now. But a couple names I wrote down of guys to look out for. I might mispronounce this one. Eli Sharasovic, Javon Hammonds, and Nazir Washington could all be interesting to see just because they're big. I think they're all 6'5", 280 at least. Hyman's is 6'4", 240, sorry, but Nazir Washington's 6'4", 270. Eli is 6'5", 280. They're all going to be great to see. Another name I wrote down here is Cam Wilson. He's transferring in from Cincinnati. Just having older guys with experience is going to be great for it. And like you said, an all-new defensive line.
Did anyone kind of step up? You know, like we mentioned in the introduction of this group, like a lot of quarterback pressures are gone. Like who do you feel in this room can kind of step up and take that next level to kind of help apply that pressure to the quarterback?
I'm curious about that myself. I don't know if I have just one name to give you here. I need to watch out more for Cam Wilson because when I saw he's transferred from Cincinnati, that's a big rivalry for us. So I'm curious to see what he's going to be like. I know Nazir Washington, he was very close with Brian Ugu, and they worked together, they roomed together. So I'm curious to see how he does because Brian Ugu was one of our best defensive linemen. So having his roommate, I want to say his protege almost, is going to be pretty sweet to see. But yeah, it's still early on. I don't know if I have a full answer for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, let's take a look at this linebacking group. It takes a big hit in losing first-team All-MAC linebacker and Matt Solopek and second-team All-MAC linebacker Ty Wise to graduation. Those two accounted for 144 tackles, and they were out there like all the time. 1,720 snaps between the two of them in 2024. The room is now highlighted by the return of Corbin Hondrew, Oscar McWood, and promising youngster Malcolm McCain. How does Miami look to replace two guys who seem to never come off the field in Spalpek and Weiss?
They really never did. I wrote here that Matt Salopek is the Brett Gabbert of Miami's defense. They're both sixth-year players. They've both been here forever. They both are so impactful. So having Ty Wise gone, it's a terrible combination to be losing. But like you mentioned, I think that the linebackers, despite the losses there, those two big losses, are going to be equally solid this year just based off the returners that had experience throughout last season and especially at that bowl game. They really stepped up at that bowl game. I know Adam Trick, he had an interception against Colorado State. That was his only on the year. So he'll be impactful as well. He had 13 solo tackles and 4.5 sacks last season. So look out for him. That's going to be a name you'll see a lot. Like you mentioned, Corbin Hondrew, he had 2 interceptions against Toledo last season. I think he had 2 sacks or 1.5 sacks throughout the season. So he's going to be great as well. Oscar McWood, he'll step up. He started in 14 games last season, but with Matt Salopek and Ty Wise gone, he'll need to step up. He's going to need to be someone that fills in those roles. Another couple names I wrote here: Malcolm McCain and Eli Kappas. They're going to be effective as well in the linebacking room. So,
who do you think steps up to take those vacancies there and starts week 1 versus Wisconsin? You mentioned Hondrew and Trick. Sounds like there's a lot of potential and good names there. Who do you think starts?
The 3 that I won't confirm, but the 3 that I am almost positive will start: Hondrew, Trick, and McWood. As far as any other starters, I guess it's really just the guys I mentioned, McCain and Kappas. I think it's how you pronounce his name, Kappas. I could see any 5 of those or all 5 of those stepping up against Wisconsin. At the very least, those three. It just really depends on the summer, which is unfortunate to hear, but I'll be in Oxford this summer, so I'm going to hope to go to a couple of those practices and see how everything's shaping up.
Very well, I'm excited to talk about this defensive backfield, but they do lose first-team All-MAC and 2023 freshman All-American cornerback Rayon Strader to Auburn. For the return safety Silas Waters, third-team All-MAC safety Eli Blakely, as well as starting corner Luke Evans. They also return a promising freshman corner in Tony Coleman Jr. From a returning production standpoint, this, and as you mentioned earlier, it looks to be the top defensive unit, or maybe even the top unit on the entire team. What should we expect from this defensive backfield in 2025?
Similar to every other position where you're losing so many good players, both to graduation and the transfer portal. But like every other position, you're going to have so many players with the opportunity to step up and really prove themselves here. And Miami's defense, last season, they were great. They were one of the best in the conference, but they're consistently one of the best in the conference. They don't really – Bill Brecken does a great job of getting everyone set. The cornerbacks coach does a great job of just getting the secondary really solid. A couple of guys that I like personally, I like Luke Evans, and you mentioned Tony Coleman Jr. I like both of those guys, just like you said, stepping up and filling in those roles. Cornerbacks is a tough one because while you're not losing as many players as maybe the defensive line, you're losing arguably the most impactful players on defense in Rayon Strader. So just missing those guys is the one concern that I have for this defense, is just that those defensive backs, because you're bringing in transfers, but a lot of the guys you have on the roster are young guys. But like I said, I mean, year after year after year, if Miami's defense is going to be consistent, that obviously shows that Bill Brecken, shows that Chuck Martin know what they're doing. So those young guys are going to step up. And just off the top of my head, I don't have any names that stick out, but any of those returns that have been here before, they're going to be the leaders in that room. And then those transfers, they're going to have to buy into what Miami football is all about.
Well, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2025, who are you picking?
That is a good question. Let me think on that real quick. It's going to be one of the linebackers. I think Adam Trick has potential because he was already impactful last season, but just losing Matt Salpeck and Ty Wise, that's getting him even more room to have an impact as a linebacker, similar to Corbin Hondrew. I say those two, Trick and Hondrew, are going to have breakout years this year.
Well, moving over to the special teams, they return All-MAC first-team kicker Dom Jobin. And they lost their kicker. I guess was it August? I think last year he left and went to Alabama, and he was an All-MAC performer. They bring in another All-MAC performer. So how are the special teams units looking, and are there any concerns?
I have no concerns because I love Dom Jobin. Like you mentioned, losing Graham Nicholson last year, I was concerned because I was like, well, there goes not just the best kicker on Miami, the best kicker in the conference. He was the best kicker in the nation. So when he left, I was like, well, who even else do we have to go up? But we brought in Dom Jobin. He's been a punter for a couple years. I wrote a profile on him. He started out as a punter, but he didn't want to be a punter. So he was looking for a opportunity to step up as a place kicker, and he's been a reliable place kicker last season. So the fact that he's coming back makes me have zero concerns for the special teams. I don't see Dom going from a great kicker to an average kicker or below. I see him sticking with just as dominant as he was last season. Dominant Dom Jobin. But having a new special teams coordinator, on the other hand, while it is a little concerning having a new coordinator, just because obviously bringing in a new coach at any time can be a little questionable, but the fact that we have someone who is from Miami is going to be great for this. And overall, I just have zero concerns with the special teams. I think we'll be equally solid. I believe Dom Jones is going to be equally as reliable. If we send him out there for a 40-yard field goal, I have no doubt that he's going to make it.
Well, you don't have any concerns with the special teams, but now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you find most concerning heading into the 2025 season?
I don't know if concerning is the right word. The one area that I'm curious to see how they'll do, because I think they do need improvement, is I guess both on offenses. The offensive line, just because, like I said, historically Miami's run offense hasn't been great early in the season, but also the wide receivers. As much confidence as I have in those guys, at the end of the day, they are new wide receivers, and with a new quarterback, that connection might be iffy once game time actually starts. I can talk about their spring showcase and how they looked solid at the end of the spring showcase, but it's a different story once they take to the field in Wisconsin. So I'm a little concerned across the board, not even just those guys. I don't want to target anyone. I'm just concerned. I'm concerned across the board that we're going to get to Wisconsin. They're going to get to that Big Ten stadium, and then everything in the summer not everything in the summer, but our summer progress might be a little bit diminished just based on actually getting there on the field. It's a whole different story between practice and getting there to a Big Ten stadium.
Well, in today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and a transfer portal, how do you think that has changed the RedHawks recruiting philosophy?
Miami's recruiting philosophy, because we aren't a big NIL school. We have NIL deals, football and basketball, but Chuck Martin is a very traditional football coach. He talks a lot about he's not a big fan of the technology that refs use. He's not a big fan of some of the changes they're making in both college and professional football, but he's very traditional in the sense that his recruitment is mostly just based on the players' performance themselves, not how much money can we give these players, what marketing can we do for these players. It's more so which player wants to play hard-nosed college football in Ohio. I mean, Ohio football obviously is different than anywhere else in the country. They take it serious. They take it they hit hard. Ohio football rocks. But the recruiting process is just going to be player focused, and accepting that as much as maybe Chuck Martin or anyone else doesn't like the changes, that the transfer portal is going to be super impactful if we're going to be losing players left and right. And you see that recruiting wide receivers from Power 4 programs, recruiting players for defense to fill in the defensive line that's basically all gone. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah.
Well, how do you feel that the staff there at Miami is doing navigating the portal?
I think they're doing a great job. It's new. It's obviously only a couple years old at this point, but I think they've done a good job of finding guys who are experienced. So they're not really recruiting transfers that are sophomores or even juniors, really. Many of the transfers are redshirt seniors, redshirt juniors, a couple fifth-year players. So finding those guys that have college experience and have college experience at a big program, like we got guys from Colorado, Notre Dame, Indiana. They've done a good job of finding guys with experience that are going to come to Oxford and shine out in the MAC.
What do you think the main strength of this 2025 team will be?
I know it might contradict what I just said a little bit ago, but that quarterback wide receiver connection, especially once conference play starts. I know early in the season, maybe it'll take a little bit of what's the right term? Growing pains almost of just getting used to it and getting everyone set. Like I said, practice and game is completely different, especially when you have back-to-back road Big Ten matchups. But once conference play starts, I have full confidence in Daquan Finn, Henry Hessen, and all those wide receivers that they'll get it done. We have for 4 or 5 years straight. Each year, we lose players to the transfer portal, and then a new player steps up and he becomes one of the best in the conference. I don't see that changing this year.
You never rebuild, you retool. But what does success look like for the RedHawks here in 2025?
Success for Miami in 2025 is going to look like coming out the gate against Wisconsin and showing that, hey, we can run, actually. We didn't do that against Northwestern, UC, or Notre Dame, really. But being able to run on the ground, whether that's running backs or Daquan Finn getting out of the pocket, is going to be great, because I think a lot of people already know that we can pass in the air. That's not really a surprise for people. We've had pretty good quarterbacks for several years, pretty good wide receivers for several years. But a lot of teams maybe would underestimate our run game. So if we can get the run game started before conference play even starts, if we can get it started as soon as week 1 or week 2, that's going to set the stage for us to go back to the conference championship, back to a bowl game, and hey, depending on how the national tournament shapes out, maybe even a bid there.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Miami RedHawks football team?
I guess just patience. It takes a lot of work when you're losing a third of your starters to get the team back set, get the team ready for conference play once that starts in late September and October. But year after year after year, even if the first couple of weeks may look sketchy, Miami football is going to shine out. They're going to go 7 or 8 games in a row. And when you have someone like Chuck Martin coming back, someone Pat Welsh, Bill Breakin, even if coaches are moving to different positions, they're still with Miami. They've been with Miami. We're going to be equally solid. I don't see us disintegrating completely.
Well, Kethan, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I hope this was helpful. But
Absolutely.
I love talking Miami football, so anytime you got my Twitter now.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.